My brother banned my 14-year-old son from his wedding. When my heartbroken, crying boy held out his heavy glass jar filled with $2,450 in savings just hoping to buy a ticket to attend. His new bride did not show a single ounce of pity. Instead, she looked down at him, her face twisting in pure disgust, and screamed, "Get your broke, crying face out of my sight. It is my special day." And my brother? He just stood there, sipping his champagne, looking away like my son did not even exist. That was the exact second I decided I was going to burn their entire fake kingdom to the ground. You see, they think I am just the clueless, struggling contractor of the family. They do not realize that the very marble floor they are standing on to humiliate my boy is owned by me. What happened next is something they will never forget for the rest of their miserable lives. Let me take a step back and give you the full picture of the people we are dealing with here, because this level of entitlement does not just happen overnight. My name is Sullivan. I am 46 years old, a single dad, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the official invisible son of my family. I am the guy who wears steel-toed work boots, faded denim jeans covered in drywall dust, and drives a heavy-duty truck that has a cracked windshield and has seen far better days. To my parents, Harrison and Penelope, and especially to my younger brother Julian, I am nothing more than the blue-collar guy who fixes their leaking sinks, changes their oil, and stays out of the way when the important people are talking. Julian, on the other hand, is the golden boy. He is a mid-level sales director who walks around acting like he is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He wears custom-tailored suits that cost more than my first car, leases luxury vehicles he can barely afford the monthly payments on, and constantly talks loudly about his stock portfolio. But I happen to know that his lifestyle is mostly funded by maxed-out credit cards, personal loans, and secret financial bailouts from our parents. Then there is Stella, his fiancée. Stella comes from a very average, completely normal middle-class background, but she tries incredibly hard to project the image of generational old money. She is the type of woman who will loudly complain about the vintage of wine at a casual family backyard barbecue just to make sure everyone in a 50-foot radius knows she has refined, expensive tastes. For years, my son Jasper idolized Julian. Jasper is 14 now, a quiet, sweet, observant kid who always looks for the good in people, even when they do not deserve it. When Jasper was younger, Julian used to play the role of the cool, fun uncle. He would show up at our house, toss a football with Jasper in the yard for exactly 10 minutes, take a few carefully staged pictures for his social media profiles to look like a dedicated family man, and then he would vanish for months on end. But to Jasper, those 10 minutes meant the absolute world. I raised Jasper completely alone since he was a baby, and I have worked tirelessly, breaking my back day in and day out to give him a good, stable life. I started my own local construction business from scratch when I was just 22. What my family does not know, what nobody in my personal life knows, is that my little construction business was just the stepping stone. Over the past 15 years, I have quietly and aggressively built a massive commercial real estate investment fund. I am currently sitting on a net worth of roughly $12.5 million. I just prefer to live simply. I do not need flashy sports cars or designer clothes with huge logos to know my worth as a man. I kept my wealth entirely hidden from my family because I knew exactly what they would do if they ever found out I had money. They would bleed me dry. They would demand massive loans they never intend to repay. They would expect me to fund their lavish, irresponsible lifestyles, and they would throw an absolute fit, calling me selfish if I ever dared to say no. So I stayed quiet. I let them treat me like the poor, uneducated relative who should just be overwhelmingly grateful to be invited to Thanksgiving dinner. I let Stella make snide, passive-aggressive comments about the rust on my truck. I let Julian give me unsolicited, condescending financial advice about how to manage a budget. I swallowed my pride every single time, because I wanted Jasper to have a relationship with his grandparents and his uncle. I wanted my son to have a family. But watching Stella scream at my boy, seeing the utter devastation and betrayal in Jasper's eyes, while Julian just looked away like a coward, something deep inside of me completely snapped. The quiet, patient, forgiving father died right there in that luxury living room. They thought they held all the power because they had the fancy clothes and the expensive wedding venue booked. But they have absolutely no idea who they just messed with. They think I am a nobody, a loser they can step on. They do not know I own the ground they walk on. What happens when the invisible man decides to stop hiding in the shadows and finally strikes back? To truly understand why this betrayal at the wedding cut so deep, you have to understand the museum of pain my family has built over the years. This wedding drama was not an isolated incident. It was not a simple misunderstanding. This was the grand finale of a lifetime of disrespect, favoritism, and emotional neglect. Let us go back to when I was 18 years old. I worked 3 miserable minimum wage jobs, flipping burgers, sweeping construction sites, and stocking grocery shelves at midnight, just to save up for college. I kept all that hard-earned money in a joint savings account my mother had set up for me when I was a kid. I worked until my hands bled. One day, I proudly walked into the bank to get a cashier's check to pay my first semester's tuition, and the teller looked at me with pity. The money was gone, every single penny. When I rushed home and confronted my mother, Penelope, she did not even look apologetic. She casually sipped her coffee and mentioned that Julian needed the money more. Julian, who was 16 at the time, wanted to join a prestigious summer leadership camp and needed a complete wardrobe upgrade to fit in with the right, wealthy crowd. She looked me dead in the eye and told me I was good with my hands and could always find manual labor work. But Julian was destined for great things and needed the head start. I had to drop out of community college and start working full-time framing houses. I never saw a dime of that money again, and I never received an apology. Then there was Harrison, my father. Let us talk about Jasper's 10th birthday. It was a major milestone, and Jasper had been talking about it for 6 months. He just wanted his grandpa to come over for a small backyard party, eat some cheap sheet cake, and watch him open a few presents. Harrison swore he would be there. The day came, and Jasper sat on the porch in his party hat for 3 hours. Harrison never showed up. He did not call. He did not send a card. He did not even text. Later that evening, I logged onto social media and saw the pictures. Harrison had spent the entire day at a luxury car dealership downtown, buying Julian a brand new, bright red sports car as a random congratulations for closing a minor, insignificant sales deal at his entry-level job. When I called my father out on it the next day, he sighed heavily, told me I was being overly sensitive, and said that Jasper would have plenty of other birthdays, but Julian needed reliable transportation for his corporate image. But the memory that haunts me the most, the one that makes my blood boil and my fists clench even now, involves Julian and baseball. Jasper was 8 years old. Julian had promised, swearing up and down on our grandmother's grave, that he would take Jasper to the batting cages on a Saturday afternoon. Jasper put on his little baseball uniform at 8 in the morning. He waited on the front porch with his glove. He waited for 4 hours. The sky turned gray, and it started pouring rain. I tried to bring him inside, offering to play video games with him, but he insisted Uncle Julian was coming, that he just got stuck in traffic. Julian never came. I finally got a hold of him at 9 o'clock that night. He answered the phone laughing, with loud club music playing in the background. He said he got caught up having drinks with Stella and totally forgot about the kid. He told me to just buy the kid an ice cream and get over it, saying 8-year-olds do not have real memories anyway. I had to hold my violently sobbing son that night, trying to explain why his hero did not show up. Despite all of this, despite the constant letdowns, Jasper still tried so hard. At every single family dinner, my son was the one clearing the plates, washing the dishes, and trying to be helpful, desperately hoping to earn just a crumb of affection from his grandparents or his uncle. Meanwhile, Julian and Stella would sit lazily on the sofa, drinking my parents' expensive wine, laughing loudly and making subtle, nasty jabs at our expense. Stella once looked at Jasper's perfectly clean, neat, but off-brand sneakers and sighed theatrically. She said it was such a shame some children do not get to experience the finer things in life, and that it must be hard growing up without proper taste. She said it loudly enough for Jasper to hear from the kitchen. I saw his small shoulders slump, and he quietly went back to scrubbing the heavy pots. I should have cut them off years ago. I know that now. Every therapist in the world would tell me I was enabling their abuse. But when you are raised to believe that family is everything, that you have to keep the peace no matter what. It is incredibly hard to break the cycle. You keep hoping they will change. You keep hoping that maybe, just maybe, if you are good enough, quiet enough, accommodating enough, they will finally look at you and love you back. But they do not. They just see your patience as a weakness to be exploited. And now they had crossed the ultimate line. They stopped targeting me and aimed their cruelty directly at my innocent son. Will they ever realize that the boy they threw away was the only one who actually loved them for who they were, and not for what they had? The chaos truly began when the wedding invitations finally arrived in the mail. This was not going to be a normal, modest family wedding. Julian and Stella were planning a massive, over-the-top event that was meant to look like a royal coronation. They booked an entire weekend at a private, ultra-luxury resort called the Obsidian. Based on the embossed gold foil on the invitations alone, I knew the estimated cost of this whole circus was easily around $150,000. I received an invitation, addressed to both me and Jasper. I was honestly surprised we were even invited, assuming Stella would relegate us to the B-list, but Jasper was absolutely thrilled. He immediately started talking about what kind of suit he should wear, asking me if he should get a bow tie or a regular tie, and how he wanted to take on extra chores to buy Uncle Julian a very special, engraved gift. Seeing him so genuinely excited made me push down my own deep resentment. If he was happy, I would put on an uncomfortable suit, show up, keep my mouth shut, and play my part as the supportive older brother. But peace in my family has a shelf life of about 48 hours. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Penelope. She did not even bother saying hello or asking how my day was before launching into her demands. "Sullivan," she said, her voice dripping with that familiar, sickening entitlement. "Stella has decided she needs a full symphony orchestra for the reception, not just a standard string quartet. We are a little short on the budget this month. I need you to transfer $15,000 to Julian's account by Friday. Consider it your wedding gift to them." I actually laughed out loud. I was standing in my kitchen in dirty work boots, and I just laughed. $15,000? I asked, making sure I heard her correctly. "Mom, I am a single dad running a small contracting business. I do not have 15 grand just laying around in a checking account to pay for some violins so Stella can feel like a princess." Her tone turned ice cold instantly. "Honestly, Sullivan, you are always so incredibly selfish. Your brother is getting married once. This is his special day. You have always been insanely jealous of him and his success, but I thought you could at least pretend to be a supportive brother for one weekend. If you care about this family at all, you will find the money. Take out a business loan if you have to. Julian deserves the best." I told her no. A firm, hard, unapologetic no. Within hours, my phone started blowing up. The flying monkeys had been officially deployed. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I had not spoken to in over 6 months were suddenly texting me, calling me a cheapskate, a terrible brother, and an embarrassment to the family name. They told me I was deliberately trying to ruin Julian's dream wedding because of my petty, pathetic jealousy. I ignored all of them. I turned my phone on silent. I was not going to take on debt to fund Stella's vanity project. But the real irony? The universe has an incredibly funny way of working things out when you least expect it. After I got off the phone with my mother, I went into my home office, opened my laptop, and logged into my highly secure investment portal. I wanted to check the recent acquisitions my wealth manager, Declan, had finalized earlier in the quarter. 2 months ago, our fund aggressively bought out a struggling, mismanaged hospitality group. We acquired 60% ownership of several high-end resort properties across the coast. I scrolled down the list of newly acquired assets. Right there, in black and white, bold text, was the name of the crown jewel of our new portfolio, the Obsidian. I stared at the screen for a long, long time. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was hallucinating. But there it was. My brother and his snobby fiancée were spending an absolute fortune to host their dream wedding at a luxury resort that I effectively owned and controlled. They were treating me like dirt, demanding I take out bank loans to fund their party, sending relatives to harass me, all while they were getting ready to celebrate on my property. I could have said something right then and there. I could have taken a screenshot, dropped the bomb in the family group chat, and watch them scramble and backtrack. But I decided to wait. I wanted to see exactly how far they were willing to push this. I wanted to see exactly who they were when they thought they held all the cards and I was just the dirt beneath their shoes. How much darker would their true colors get before the light finally exposed them to the world? 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a phone call from Julian. His voice sounded strained, slightly higher pitched than usual, and incredibly fake. "Hey man," he said, dragging out the syllables like a teenager trying to lie to his parents. "Look, we have a bit of a massive situation with the venue." I leaned back in my office chair, resting my boots on the desk. "Oh?" I asked calmly. "What kind of situation?" "The resort management just updated their corporate policies," he lied smoothly, not missing a beat. "They are strictly an 18 and over property now. Completely child-free. No kids allowed on the premises at all. Insurance reasons or something about liability with the pools. It is totally out of my hands, bro. So Jasper cannot come. I mean, you can still come, obviously, but you will have to find a sitter for him for the weekend." I knew it was a lie immediately. I owned the damn place. We prided ourselves on being a highly rated, family-friendly luxury destination. There was absolutely no such policy in the corporate bylaws. But I played along, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. "Julian, Jasper has been looking forward to this for 6 months. He already bought a custom suit. He has been doing extra chores to buy you a gift. Can you not talk to the manager? Make a special exception for your own nephew?" "Sorry, bro," Julian said, not sounding sorry in the slightest. Their hands are totally tied. The manager was super strict about it. Sucks, but it is what it is. "Look, I gotta run. Stella is stressing out about the floral arrangements and the caterer. See you at the wedding." He hung up. I sat there in the silence of my office, absolutely seething. I had to go downstairs and break the news to Jasper. My boy tried to be brave. He nodded slowly, but I saw his lower lip trembling before he quickly turned around and ran up the stairs to his room. I could hear him quietly crying through the closed door. My heart shattered into a million pieces. The ugly, undeniable truth came out 2 days later at a casual Sunday family barbecue at my parents' house. Stella's cousin, Daphne, was there. Daphne is loud, notoriously lacks any sort of filter, and had consumed far too many margaritas before the burgers were even off the grill. Jasper and I were sitting quietly in the corner, eating our food, when Daphne stumbled over to our picnic table, holding her glowing smartphone. "It is such a huge bummer Jasper cannot come," she slurred loudly, drawing the attention of half the backyard. "But honestly, Sullivan, between you and me, Stella is just being a massive bridezilla right now." I frowned, setting my fork down. "What do you mean, Daphne?" She giggled loudly and tapped her phone screen. "I have a video from her bachelorette party last weekend. She literally bragged about crossing Jasper off the guest list. Here, watch this." Before I could reach out and stop her, she hit play. The volume was turned all the way up. On the screen, Stella was wearing a white sash, holding a massive pink cocktail, and surrounded by her cheering bridesmaids. She was laughing maliciously, her eyes cold. "There is absolutely no way I am letting Sullivan's kid ruin my wedding aesthetic," Stella said on the video, her shrill voice piercing through the sudden, dead silence of the backyard. "It is an exclusive, high-end, VIP event. I am not having some awkward, blue-collar kid standing in the background of my magazine-worthy photos looking like he just stepped out of a cheap thrift store." Julian did not want to deal with his whiny, broke brother, so I just told him to lie and say the resort band kids. Problem solved. Cheers to a perfect, aesthetic wedding. The video ended. The backyard was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. I slowly turned my head and saw Jasper standing right behind my chair, holding a plate of half-eaten food. He had heard every single cruel word. He had seen the video. The look on his face was not just sadness anymore. It was total, absolute, soul-crushing devastation. The uncle he loved and worshipped had not just excluded him. He had actively allowed his future wife to treat Jasper like garbage, like a disgusting stain on their perfect, fake lives. Penelope rushed over, her face pale, trying to snatch the phone from Daphne's hands. "Oh, she was just drunk. She did not mean it, my mother stammered, looking at me with wide, panicked eyes. Sullivan, please do not make a scene. You know how girls get at bachelorette parties. I did not make a scene. I did not yell. I stood up, put my hand on Jasper's shaking shoulder, and gently guided him out of the yard. We did not say a single word to my parents or my brother. The drive home was the longest, quietest drive of my life. Jasper just stared out the passenger window, tears silently rolling down his cheeks, his small hands gripping his knees. Dad, Jasper whispered finally, his voice cracking with a pain no child should ever feel. Why am I not good enough for them? That question broke me, completely tore me apart. I pulled the heavy truck over to the side of the road, threw it in park, unbuckled my seatbelt, and pulled my son into the tightest hug I could muster. You are more than good enough, Jasper, I told him fiercely, my own voice thick with emotion. You are the absolute best thing in this world. They are the ones who are broken. They are the ones who are completely empty inside. I made a silent, unbreakable promise to him right there on the side of the road. They wanted a high-end, luxury wedding without us? Fine. But they were going to learn a very hard, catastrophic lesson about who really holds the power in this family. How do you punish people who only value money and social status? You take every single bit of it away. But what would happen when Jasper decided to confront them himself? The next evening, after a long day of silence, Jasper came downstairs. His eyes were red and swollen from crying, but he had a strange, determined look on his face. In his small hands, he held the large, heavy glass jar where he kept all his life savings. Every birthday dollar he ever received, every weekly allowance, every single penny he earned from mowing lawns and shoveling snow in our neighborhood. $2,450 in crumpled bills and rolled coins. Dad, he said quietly, looking down at his shoes before meeting my eyes. I want to go to Uncle Julian's house right now. If they need money for the symphony orchestra or to pay the resort fees, I can give them this. Maybe if I pay for my own expensive plate of food, Stella will let me come. I just want to see him get married. I promise I will stand in the back. It physically killed me to hear him say that. My stomach churned with nausea. He was trying to buy the basic love and acceptance of people who were entirely bankrupt of a human soul. I should have told him no. I should have protected him from them. But I realized, in that moment, he needed to do this. He needed to see their true, ugly faces one last time, without any filters, without any excuses from my parents. He needed absolute closure, even if it was going to be the most painful lesson of his young life. I drove him across town to Julian's sprawling, leased McMansion in the upscale suburbs. When Julian opened the massive oak front door, he looked instantly annoyed and panicked to see us standing there. What are you doing here? He muttered, stepping into the doorway to block our view of the inside. Jasper stepped forward bravely, his small arms struggling slightly under the weight of the heavy glass jar. Uncle Julian, he started, his voice shaking slightly but holding firm. I know Stella said I would ruin the aesthetic of the pictures. I promise I will stay in the very back corner the whole time. I will not get in the way of the photographer. I brought all my savings. It is $2,450. Please, can I just come to the ceremony? Julian stared at the jar, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He looked at me, sheer panic flashing in his eyes. He did not know what to do. He was cornered by the pure innocence of a child. But before Julian could formulate another cowardly lie, Stella marched into the grand foyer. She was wearing a silk designer robe, her hair perfectly styled, and she was holding a crystal glass of expensive champagne. She looked from Jasper, down to the jar of dirty coins, and then her perfectly contoured face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated contempt. Are you actually kidding me right now? Stella shrieked, her voice echoing harshly against the high ceilings of the entryway. You bring your kid here to my house to guilt-trip us with a jar of dirty change? Stella, Julian mumbled weakly, looking desperately at the hardwood floor. Maybe we should just... Shut up, Julian, she snapped, cutting him off instantly. She stepped right up to Jasper, looming over him with a terrifying glare. Let me make this very clear for you, you little brat. I do not want you there. You do not fit in with my friends. Your dad is a cheap loser who would not even help pay for the orchestra. And I am absolutely not letting his miserable, pathetic life drag down my perfect wedding. Get your broke, crying face out of my sight. It is my special day. Jasper flinched backward like he had been physically struck across the face. He dropped his head, clutching the heavy jar to his chest so tightly his knuckles turned completely white. Suddenly, my mother, Penelope, emerged from the kitchen holding a stack of luxury napkins. She had been there helping Stella assemble overpriced wedding favors. Instead of reprimanding Stella for verbally abusing a 14-year-old boy in her own home, Penelope turned her blinding anger directly on me. Sullivan, how could you be so cruel? Penelope hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. Bringing him here to cause unnecessary drama? It is just a child, Sullivan. Tell him to grow up and get over it. Stop trying to ruin your brother's joy because you have nothing going on in your own life. Just swallow your stubborn pride, take your kid, and leave them alone. Do not ruin this for us. I stood completely still. I looked at my mother, who chose a snobby future daughter-in-law over her own flesh and blood grandson. I looked at my brother, who was still staring at his expensive Italian leather shoes, too utterly cowardly to defend the nephew who worshipped him. And then I looked at Stella, who was smirking, taking a slow sip of her champagne, feeling entirely victorious. I felt a very strange, chilling sensation wash over my entire body. The burning anger, the deep hurt, the 15 years of built-up resentment. It all suddenly vanished. It evaporated, replaced by an ice-cold, terrifying, calculating calm. I did not yell. I did not curse. I did not throw a punch or break anything. I just reached out, placed my rough hand gently on Jasper's back, and slowly turned him toward the door. Keep your money, Jasper, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, slicing through the tension in the room like a razor blade. They cannot afford it. I did not look back. We walked down the manicured driveway to my rusty truck in complete silence. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of my final realization. These people were not my family anymore. They were just parasites, and it was finally time to exterminate them. When Jasper was safely asleep in his bed later that night, I went into my home office and locked the door. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, sat down at my desk, and picked up my cell phone. I dialed a specific, secure number I rarely used outside of strict business hours. Rosalind answered on the second ring. She was the chief operating officer of the Obsidian, a sharp, brilliant, no-nonsense woman who knew exactly how to handle high-pressure situations. Mr. Sullivan, she said, sounding surprised but professional. It is quite late. Is everything all right with the portfolio? Rosalind, I said, my voice steady and cold. I need you to log into the system and pull up the file for a wedding booked exactly 3 weeks from now. The groom's name is Julian. The bride is Stella. I heard the rapid clacking of a mechanical keyboard through the speaker. Yes, sir. I have the file right here. It is a very large event. They have opted for the Platinum VIP package, encompassing the grand ballroom and 20 guest suites. Good, I replied, staring blankly at the wall. Listen to me very carefully. I want you to immediately freeze all corporate discounts, family favors, or complimentary upgrades applied to their account. Revert every single item, every plate of food, every bottle of wine, to its absolute maximum premium cost. I want every late fee, every tax, and every penalty strictly enforced to the letter of the contract. And Rosalind? Yes, sir? She asked, sensing the gravity in my tone. When they arrive for check-in, I want you to personally ensure that they understand exactly who owns the ground they are standing on. But do not tell them a single word until the exact moment they try to hand over their credit card. Consider it done, Mr. Sullivan. Have a good night. I hung up the phone. Then, without hesitating, I called Declan, my wealth manager. Declan, I need you to do a deep, aggressive dive into Julian's personal finances. Pull every public record, check the title on his lease cars, his house, his credit utilization, everything. I want to know exactly how much debt he is drowning in. And check my parents' accounts too. Something tells me they are secretly funding this entire circus, and I want to know exactly how they got the money. I sat back in my leather chair, staring out the window into the pitch-black night. They wanted a memorable, high-end wedding to show off to their fake friends. I was going to give them an unforgettable one. Have you ever cut off toxic family members who pushed you too far? Do you think I should have just let it go for the sake of keeping the peace? Or did they completely deserve what was coming their way? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But before you make your final judgment, you need to see exactly what Declan found in those hidden financial records, and what happened when Stella tried to walk into my luxury resort wearing her designer gown expecting the royal treatment. Trust me, the real show is just getting started. The morning of the wedding departure finally arrived, but Jasper and I were not packing our bags for a humiliating weekend of hiding in the shadows at a resort that did not want us. Instead, I woke my son up at 4 in the morning. He rubbed his eyes, looking confused as I handed him a brand new, heavy winter coat and a freshly packed suitcase. I told him we were going on a trip, just the two of us. We drove to the international airport, bypassing the crowded economy check-in lines entirely, and walked straight into the private VIP first-class lounge. Jasper had never flown first class before. He had never even been out of the country. When we boarded the massive plane and he saw his private pod, complete with a lay-flat bed, a massive entertainment screen, and a personal attendant offering him warm chocolate chip cookies before takeoff, the sadness that had clouded his eyes for weeks finally began to lift. We were flying to Geneva, Switzerland, to attend an exclusive, invite-only vintage supercar exhibition. I knew he loved cars, and I wanted to show him a world far bigger and far better than the narrow-minded, toxic bubble my family lived in. While Jasper was busy watching movies and eating gourmet meals at 30,000 feet, I paid for the exorbitant in-flight Wi-Fi and connected my secure laptop. I had a scheduled video call with Declan, my wealth manager, who had been digging into the financial records of my brother and my parents for the past 48 hours. When Declan's face appeared on my screen, he did not look happy. He looked deeply disturbed. "Sullivan," Declan said, adjusting his glasses and looking down at a thick stack of printed documents on his desk. "I pulled the records you asked for. Julian is drowning. He is not just broke. He is radioactive. He owes roughly $80,000 in high-interest credit card debt. His luxury cars are both leased and he is 3 months behind on the payments, and his rent is actively in arrears. He has zero assets. Nothing." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of the black coffee the flight attendant had just handed me. I figured as much. He is living a fake life. But how is he paying for a wedding that costs $150,000? The Obsidian requires a 50% deposit up front. Where did he get $75,000 in cash? Declan took a deep breath, and his expression grew even darker. "That is the part that is going to make you furious. I looked into your parents' finances as well. Harrison and Penelope do not have that kind of liquid cash either. But 2 weeks ago, they took out a massive second mortgage on their family home. They pulled out $100,000 in equity, essentially gambling their entire retirement on Julian's wedding." I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and disgust. "They are fools," I said quietly. "They are going to lose their house when Julian inevitably fails to pay them back. But still, a second mortgage only covers a portion. Where did the rest of the money come from? My mother demanded $15,000 from me, and I said no. They had to bridge the gap somehow." Declan leaned closer to the camera. "Sullivan, do you remember a joint credit line you opened with your father about 20 years ago? Back when you were first starting your construction business and needed a cosigner for equipment rentals." I frowned, searching my memory. "Yes, but I paid that off in full 15 years ago. I thought the account was closed." "It was dormant, not closed," Declan corrected firmly. "It had a maximum limit of $50,000. 3 days ago, someone submitted a formal request to the bank to reactivate the line of credit and authorize a massive cash advance. The request required 2 signatures, Harrison's and yours." My blood ran cold. The low hum of the airplane engines seemed to fade away. I stared at Declan's face on the screen. "Are you telling me—" "Yes," Declan interrupted, holding up a scanned document. They forged your signature, Sullivan. Your parents or Julian or all of them working together. They forged your signature on a binding financial document and drew exactly $50,000 from an account tied directly to your social security number and your personal credit profile. They stole from you to pay for Stella's orchestra and her imported caviar. The betrayal hit me like a physical punch to the chest. It was one thing to be verbally abusive, to be dismissive, to exclude my son. But this was federal fraud. This was theft. My own flesh and blood had willingly committed a severe financial crime, risking my livelihood and my reputation, just to maintain a pathetic illusion of wealth for a single weekend. They truly believed I was so stupid, so disconnected, that I would never notice $50,000 tied to my name. A dark, heavy silence settled over me. I looked over at Jasper, who was laughing at a cartoon on his screen, oblivious to the sheer wickedness of the people he used to call family. Declan, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I want you to contact our legal team immediately. Draft a formal police report for identity theft and wire fraud. Do not file it yet, but have it ready to submit at my command. Then, I want you to flag that $50,000 transaction as fraudulent with the banking institution. Freeze the funds. Done, Declan said, typing rapidly on his keyboard. What about the resort? They are scheduled to check in tomorrow afternoon. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was the smile of a man who was about to watch an execution. Let them check in, I told him. Let them walk through those double glass doors thinking they are royalty. I want Rosalind to handle them exactly as we discussed. It is time they learn the actual cost of their choices. The Obsidian Resort is a masterpiece of modern architecture. It sits on a private, pristine coastline, featuring imported Italian marble floors, towering crystal chandeliers, and a staff trained to anticipate the needs of billionaires, celebrities, and royalty. It is a place where average people simply do not belong, and Stella believed with her entire soul that she was destined to rule it. I was sitting on the private balcony of our 5-star hotel suite in Geneva, surrounded by the breathtaking view of the snow-capped Swiss Alps. Jasper was inside, excitedly unpacking his new clothes for the car show. I had my laptop open on the small patio table, a steaming cup of rich espresso in my hand. On the screen was a live, high-definition security feed from the VIP check-in lobby of the Obsidian, transmitted directly to me by Rosalind. I watched as a fleet of black luxury SUVs, undoubtedly rented on a credit card that was about to max out, pulled up to the grand entrance. The valet staff rushed forward to open the doors. Out stepped Julian, wearing a custom tuxedo, looking like a nervous actor playing a role that was far too big for him. Then came Stella. She was wearing a pre-wedding white silk pantsuit, a massive designer sunglasses resting on her head, and she was carrying a tiny, useless, diamond-encrusted purse. Following right behind them was the entire entourage of flying monkeys. My parents, Harrison and Penelope, looking smug, and Stella's extended family, who were busy taking photos of the ceiling and trying to look unimpressed. They walked up to the VIP reception desk with an air of staggering arrogance. Stella slammed her designer bag onto the polished mahogany counter and loudly announced, "We are the VIP wedding party. Stella and Julian. We have the platinum package. I need the keys to the bridal suite immediately, and I want champagne sent up in 5 minutes." The young concierge behind the desk maintained a perfect, polite smile, having been thoroughly briefed by Rosalind. "Welcome to the Obsidian, madam. I just need a credit card to put on file for the remaining balance and incidental charges before I can hand over the keys." Julian stepped up, puffing out his chest, and pulled a sleek metal credit card from his wallet. He slid it across the counter with a practiced, arrogant flick of his wrist. The concierge inserted the card into the machine. A few seconds passed. The machine beeped, a sharp, unyielding sound. The concierge frowned slightly. "I am sorry, sir. This card has been declined." Julian's face flushed a deep, ugly shade of red. Stella whipped her head around to glare at him. "What do you mean, declined?" Julian snapped, his voice rising in panic. "Try it again. The machine is broken." The concierge tried it again. Another beep. "Declined, sir." Julian frantically dug into his wallet and pulled out a second card. The same result. Then a third. Every single line of credit he possessed was either maxed out or frozen. The entourage standing behind them started whispering. Stella's father, a man who prided himself on marrying his daughter off to a supposedly wealthy businessman, crossed his arms and looked at Julian with deep suspicion. "Excuse me," Stella screeched, slamming her hand on the desk. "This is entirely unacceptable. We paid a massive deposit. We were guaranteed a 50% corporate discount because my future husband works for a major firm. Just run the account with the discount applied. You are ruining my weekend." Right on cue, a side door opened, and Rosalind stepped into the lobby. She was dressed in an impeccable, sharp navy blue tailored suit, projecting absolute authority. She walked behind the counter, gently moving the concierge aside, and fixed her cold, unwavering gaze on Stella. "Good afternoon," Rosalind said, her voice smooth but carrying the weight of a judge reading a sentence. "I am Rosalind, the chief operating officer of this resort. There seems to be a significant misunderstanding regarding your account." Stella crossed her arms, tapping her foot impatiently. "Finally, someone competent. Tell your employee to fix the machine and give me my keys. We have the 50% corporate discount." Rosalind did not blink. "I am afraid that discount has been permanently revoked," she stated clearly, ensuring her voice carried across the quiet lobby so every single relative could hear. "Furthermore, our accounting department has been notified by the banking authorities that the $50,000 wire transfer used to pay a portion of your deposit has been flagged for severe fraud and identity theft. The funds have been frozen and reversed." Harrison and Penelope visibly jolted, their faces draining of all color. Penelope grabbed Harrison's arm to steady herself. They knew exactly what that meant. Therefore, Rosalind continued relentlessly. "The remaining balance for this weekend is no longer $75,000. With the removal of the unapproved discounts, the reversal of the fraudulent funds, and the application of standard late penalties outlined in your contract, your current outstanding balance is $300,000. Payable immediately, in full via certified funds, or you will not be permitted past this lobby." The number hung in the air like a live grenade. $300,000. Stella's mouth dropped open so wide I thought her jaw would unhinge. "300,000? She shrieked, her voice cracking into a hysterical pitch. "That is impossible. We are VIPs. I demand to speak to the owner of this resort right now. Bring the chairman down here this instant. I will have you fired. I will have this whole place shut down." Rosalind offered a tiny, terrifying smile. "The owner is well aware of your situation, madam. In fact, he has been anticipating your arrival. He is currently waiting for you in a virtual meeting in our executive conference room. If you and your immediate family would please follow me." Stella sneered, turning back to look at her gossiping family. "See?" she announced proudly, trying to salvage her shattered dignity. "I am going to talk to the owner. He will fire this rude woman, comp our rooms, and upgrade our entire party. Wait right here." Julian, however, looked like he was marching to the gallows. He was sweating profusely, loosening his expensive silk tie. Harrison and Penelope followed behind them, their steps heavy and terrified. They were led into a massive, soundproof executive boardroom dominated by a huge digital display screen. Rosalind directed them to sit at the long table, then picked up a remote and turned on the display. On my laptop in Switzerland, the connection went live. The massive screen in the boardroom flickered to life. I sat in my chair on the balcony, leaning forward so my face filled the frame. Behind me, the majestic, snow-covered peaks of the Swiss Alps gleamed under the bright European sun, a stark contrast to the sterile, tense boardroom they were trapped in. The reaction was instantaneous and violently satisfying. Stella gasped, stepping backward and literally dropping her expensive designer sunglasses onto the floor. They shattered, but she did not even look down. Julian let out a pathetic, high-pitched noise that sounded like a whimpering dog. My mother, Penelope, let out a loud, breathless shriek and physically collapsed into one of the leather chairs, pressing her hands over her mouth. Harrison gripped the edge of the mahogany table, his knuckles white, his mouth opening and closing without a single sound coming out. "Hello, family," I said, my voice echoing loudly through the state-of-the-art speakers in the boardroom. I made sure my tone was pleasant, conversational, and utterly devoid of mercy. "Welcome to the Obsidian. I hope you found the valet service satisfactory." What is this?" Stella stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. "Why is he on the screen?" "Rosalind, I demanded to see the owner. Get this loser off the monitor." Rosalind, standing quietly in the corner of the room, did not flinch. "Madam," she said calmly, "you are looking at the majority shareholder and owner of the Obsidian Resort Group. Mr. Sullivan holds 60% ownership of this property and all its affiliated assets." The silence that followed was so profound, so heavy, it felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Stella stared at the screen, her eyes bulging, her brain utterly failing to process the reality unfolding before her. The blue-collar, dirty, pathetic brother-in-law she had relentlessly mocked, the man whose child she had banished for not fitting her aesthetic, was the man who owned the very kingdom she was trying to rent. "Julian," I said, shifting my gaze directly to my sweating brother, "you look a little pale. Are you struggling to find a way to pay that $300,000 bill?" Julian swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sullivan, bro, please," he choked out, his voice cracking with pure terror. "This has to be a joke. Tell me this is a prank. We do not have that kind of money. You know we do not." "I know exactly what you do not have, Julian," I replied sharply, dropping the pleasantries. "Declan pulled your records. I know you are drowning in $80,000 of credit card debt. I know you lease those cars you brag about. I know you are nothing but a hollow shell of a man pretending to be important." I then shifted my eyes to my parents, who were shrinking in their seats. "And you too," I continued, my voice turning to ice. "A second mortgage? Risking the family home to pay for a wedding? That is foolish, but it is your choice. However, forging my signature on a dormant credit line to steal $50,000? That is a federal crime." Penelope burst into loud, hysterical tears. "Sullivan, please," she wailed, reaching her hands toward the screen as if she could grab me. "We were desperate. Julian needed the money, and you were being so stubborn. We were going to pay it back. I swear on my life, do not do this to us. It is your brother's special day." I leaned closer to the camera. "Special day?" I asked softly. "You mean the day you all decided my 14-year-old son was not good enough to stand in the same room as you? The day you let this Harridan," I pointed to Stella, "scream in my son's face while he held a jar of pennies he saved just to buy your love?" Stella finally found her voice. It was desperate, shrill, and trembling. "Sullivan, we can fix this. I am sorry about Jasper. Okay?" I was stressed. Brides get stressed. "It was a mistake. Just waive the fees. Tell the front desk to let us in. My entire family is waiting out there. You cannot humiliate me in front of my family." I let out a slow, dark laugh. "Oh, Stella, I am not humiliating you. You did this to yourself. You wanted an exclusive, high-end VIP event. You specifically said you did not want anyone broke or awkward ruining your aesthetic." I paused, letting the silence stretch out, letting the sheer terror wash over them. "Well, Stella," I continued, my voice ringing with finality, "you are broke. You owe $300,000 you cannot pay. You are a fraud. Your fiancé is a fraud, and you do not meet the financial or moral requirements to step foot inside my property." I looked at Rosalind through the camera. "Rosalind, as the owner of this establishment, I am formally denying service to this party. They have exactly 10 minutes to vacate the lobby and the premises. If they do not leave or if they cause a disturbance, call the local authorities and have them arrested for trespassing." "Yes, Mr. Sullivan," Rosalind said, stepping forward. Julian fell to his knees. He actually dropped to his knees on the carpeted floor of the boardroom, sobbing openly, tears streaming down his face, begging me, pleading with me to save him. Penelope was hyperventilating, and Harrison looked like he was about to have a heart attack. I reached out and hovered my finger over the disconnect button on my laptop. "Have a wonderful wedding, Julian," I said coldly. I ended the call. The screen in the boardroom went black. The aftermath in the lobby was something I only heard about later from Rosalind's detailed security reports. But the visual image was incredibly satisfying. When Julian, Stella, and my parents walked out of the boardroom, they looked like they had just survived a shipwreck. They were pale, shaking, and openly weeping. Stella's family, the superficial, money-hungry relatives who had been busy taking selfies by the marble fountain, immediately rushed over, demanding to know what was taking so long and where their room keys were. When Stella's father, a gruff man who only respected wealth, demanded an explanation, the truth finally spilled out. It was not a private confession. It was a loud, hysterical meltdown in the middle of a luxury lobby. Stella screamed at Julian, hitting his chest with her tiny fists, blaming him for lying to her about his finances. She shrieked that he was a broke, pathetic loser who had ruined her life. The irony was truly a masterpiece of poetic justice. Jasper was deemed not classy enough for the wedding. Now, the wedding was entirely cancelled because the groom himself was not classy enough to pay his basic bills. Stella's family did not offer to help. They did not rally around the young couple in their time of need. Instead, they turned on Julian like a pack of starving wolves. Stella's father yelled that Julian was a con artist who had tricked his daughter into marrying into poverty. The bridesmaids, who just days earlier had laughed at Jasper on that video, awkwardly grabbed their luggage and called Ubers to take them to the airport, abandoning Stella right there in the lobby. When Julian tried to beg the concierge for just one room for the night, Rosalind stepped in and firmly reminded them of the 10-minute trespassing warning. The threat of police intervention was the final nail in the coffin. The glorious, royal wedding party dragged their own suitcases out of the grand entrance, standing on the hot pavement waiting for economy taxis, because their rented luxury SUVs had already been repossessed by the rental company due to the declined credit cards. While they were being thrown out onto the street, I made another phone call. I called my legal team back in the States. I authorized them to officially file the police report regarding the forged signature and the stolen $50,000. I did not care that it was my parents. I did not care about the so-called bonds of family. When people choose to steal from you and abuse your child, they forfeit the right to call you family. They become criminals and they need to be treated as such. I spent the rest of the week in Switzerland with Jasper. We went to the vintage car show, where Jasper got to sit in the driver's seat of a classic 1960 Ferrari. We ate incredible food, we hiked in the mountains, and we talked. We talked a lot. I told him everything about the fund, the resort, and what had happened in that boardroom. I did not hide the ugly truth from him. Jasper was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me, his eyes clearer and brighter than they had been in months. "You stood up for me, Dad," he said, his voice full of awe. "I will always stand up for you, Jasper," I promised him. "Nobody gets to treat you like you are less than. Nobody." By the time we flew back home to the States, the fake kingdom Julian and Stella had built was already burning to the ground, reduced to nothing but ash and bitter regret. If you have made it this far into the story, I want to thank you. Dealing with toxic family is incredibly isolating, and reading stories from people who understand has helped me immensely. Please drop a W in the comments below. It stands for win, because cutting out toxic people is the biggest victory you can achieve in life. I will be reading every comment, liking them, and replying to everyone who leaves a W. Now, let me tell you about the final, pathetic confrontation that happened when we got back home. 2 days after Jasper and I returned from our trip to Europe, I was sitting on my front porch, drinking a beer and watching the sunset. The peace and quiet was beautiful. Then, a beaten-up, rusted sedan pulled into my driveway. It was Julian's old college car, the one he had hidden in a storage unit because he was too embarrassed to drive it. Julian stepped out. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a single week. He was unshaven, wearing wrinkled sweatpants, and his eyes were bloodshot from crying. Out of the passenger side stepped Stella. The designer clothes were gone. The heavy makeup was smeared. She looked exhausted, broken, and desperate. They walked up my driveway slowly, like prisoners walking to the executioner's block. I did not stand up. I just took a sip of my beer and watched them approach. Sullivan, Julian croaked, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. Please, you have to call your lawyers off. The police came to Mom and Dad's house yesterday. They are investigating the fraud. Mom is terrified she is going to go to prison. They are going to lose the house to the bank. I stared at him, my expression blank. They should have thought about the legal consequences before they committed a felony to pay for a party. I replied calmly. Stella stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. She actually fell to her knees on the concrete driveway. Sullivan, I am begging you. My family will not speak to me. The wedding is ruined. We have no money. Julian's credit is destroyed, and the bank is threatening to sue us for the cancellation fees. We have nothing. Please just pay the resort bill. You have millions of dollars. It is pocket change for you. Help us. We are family. Just then, the screen door opened, and Jasper stepped out onto the porch. He was wearing his favorite comfortable clothes, looking relaxed and confident. He walked up and stood right next to my chair, looking down at his uncle and the woman who had verbally abused him. Julian looked up at Jasper, his eyes pleading. Jasper, buddy, tell your dad to help us out. Uncle Julian is really sorry. I was stressed. We made a mistake. Jasper looked at Julian, and there was no hero worship left in his eyes. There was only pity. Stella reached her hands out toward Jasper. Please, Jasper. I was so mean to you. I am so sorry. I was just acting like a crazy bride. Please ask your dad to forgive us. I set my beer down on the table. I looked at Stella, kneeling on the hard concrete, her face stained with tears and desperation, begging for the money she worshipped so deeply. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked her dead in the eyes. I repeated the exact words she had screamed at my son just a few weeks prior, matching her cruel tone perfectly. Get your broke, crying face out of my sight, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet neighborhood. Stella gasped, burying her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Julian hung his head, realizing that the bridge was not just burned, it was vaporized. Jasper looked at them one last time, turned around, and calmly walked back into the house. He did not say a word. He did not need to. His silence was the loudest, most powerful rejection they could have ever received. Get off my property, I told Julian, my voice hard and final. And if you or our parents ever try to contact me or my son again, I will make sure the prosecutors push for the maximum prison sentence for that forged document. Julian slowly helped Stella to her feet. They stumbled back to their rusted car, got in, and drove away into the fading light. I sat on the porch, finished my beer, and watched them disappear. The fallout was swift and merciless. There was no grand redemption, no tearful family reunion, no keeping the peace. There was only the brutal reality of consequences. The wedding obviously never happened. 2 weeks after the disastrous scene on my driveway, Stella officially filed for divorce, or rather, annulled the engagement, citing irreconcilable financial differences. She packed whatever designer bags she had left and moved back into her parents' basement. Julian was left entirely alone, buried under a mountain of insurmountable debt. He had to declare personal bankruptcy, and his wages at his mid-level job were severely garnished by multiple creditors. As for my parents, Harrison and Penelope, they faced the full wrath of the legal system. The bank that held the stolen $50,000 did not care about family excuses. Facing severe criminal charges for wire fraud and forgery, they were forced into a devastating plea deal. They avoided actual prison time due to their age and lack of prior records, but they were hit with massive fines and mandatory restitution. The second mortgage they took out to fund the wedding destroyed their financial stability. 3 months later, their sprawling suburban home, the house we grew up in, was foreclosed on by the bank. They had to move into a tiny, cramped apartment on the bad side of town, relying entirely on their meager Social Security checks to survive. Some of the flying monkeys, the extended relatives who had texted me calling me selfish, tried to reach out after they learned I was a multimillionaire. Suddenly, they wanted to invite me to dinner. They wanted to reconnect. I changed my phone number and blocked every single one of them on all platforms. Blood does not make you family. Shared genetics do not give someone a free pass to abuse you, steal from you, or humiliate your children. Respect, loyalty, and unconditional love are what build a family. I learned that the hard way, but I am grateful I learned it in time to protect Jasper. Today, Jasper and I are doing incredibly well. He is doing great in high school, and we spend our weekends restoring a vintage car together in the garage. He is confident, happy, and surrounded only by people who truly value him. I do not feel a single ounce of guilt for what I did to Julian, Stella, or my parents. I did not destroy them. I simply handed them the shovel and let them dig their own graves. Some people, especially older relatives who worship the concept of forced family unity, have called me cold-blooded. They say I went too far by pressing charges against my own parents and throwing my brother out of my resort. They claim I should have been the bigger person and used my wealth to save them, regardless of how they treated my son. So, I turn the final verdict over to you, the jury of the internet. Did I go too far by letting my toxic family lose everything? Or did they get exactly what they deserved for trying to exclude and humiliate my son? Let me know your honest opinions down in the comments section. If you enjoyed this story of justified revenge, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another dramatic story. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, never let anyone, not even family, treat you like you are invisible. Stay strong, and I will see you in the next video.